Well, welcome back to the ALEC States 250 video series. I'm joined by a very special guest today, a friend of ALEC, Bob McEwen. Bob is a former congressman, a former state legislator from Ohio, and the current executive director of the Council for National Policy. Bob, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Lee. It's my pleasure. And one thing you left out, I'm a big fan of ALEC. It's a marvelous, great organization. I have great respect for it.
Well, we really appreciate that. So to get started and jump into our conversation, obviously the reason we're here, America is in the midst of celebrating 250 years since the signing of the Declaration of Independence, next July 4th, 2026. As you reflect on that milestone, what stands out to you on the importance?
Well, it's important that all of us think about that a bit, because right now, currently, the United States of America consists of 4% of the population of the world. That means 96% are not Americans. And yet that 4% each year writes more books, more plays, more symphonies, more copyrights, more inventions than the other 96% combined. For thousands of years, people hoped to someday fly. It was Americans that invented the airplane and the light bulb, the telegraph, the telephone, put men on the moon. There's a ship parking in Hong Kong and Singapore at this very moment, using a global positioning system conceived, invented, and maintained by Americans. There's a car dealer in Buenos Aires ordering a part from Stuttgart using an internet conceived, invented, and maintained by Americans. The entire world, thank God for the invention. There's skyscrapers all over the world because Elisha Otis, an American from Vermont, invented the elevator in places where it's 100 degrees, 120 degrees, but because Willis Carrier invented the air conditioner, so the entire world has been blessed by this 4%. And so your question is very appropriate. Why is it? I'm just thinking, I was talking to some folks in an Eastern European country just a couple of weeks ago, some young kids, and a plane was flying real low, and I just started walking through it about the plane, the air conditioning, the tires. The reason there's tires on every car in the world, on every airplane in the world, is because an American named Charles Goodyear from Akron, Ohio, invented the vulcanization process for rubber. So why is it that 4% is so different from the rest? And it is found right there in our birth certificate. We hold these truths. That means there's right and wrong. There's a standard, not just what your truth is or my truth. We understand there is a truth, that all men are created. They didn't get here by accident on their own because they were just really good at making things. We're by their Creator and endowed with certain privileges from their Creator that are life. Now, no other nation does that. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Notice the sequence. See, liberty is a precious little value if you're dead. So you have to have life first, then liberty, then sewer systems and overpasses. But the first thing you do is life. And this nation said that wherever you are, it didn't make any difference what your height or your background or your skin color. If you could just, Jews knew that if they could make it and get under the canopy of protection of the American flag, that they would be protected for their life. So it come from all over the world. And as people escape to come here for the freedom, that nation, that little 4%, produces a third of all the goods and services on the planet. And it's because we recognize our rights come from God. He gave us life and liberty. And for the rest of the world, they think that it comes from power, from the group. And the group can take your liberty or take your... And on that topic, any politician who will take innocent life will not hesitate to take your liberty. And that's what makes America so different.
You said a couple things that I think were really important there. One, about the innovators that have come out of America and truly changed the world. I think you got a nice mention of an Ohioan with Goodyear. And the other one that I often think of would be the Wright brothers. Although, of course, North Carolina often claims, North Carolina was the location of the first flight, but just so many great examples of pioneers and innovators that have come from our country that have changed the world. The other piece that you touched on were these founding ideals and the way that our founders were able to foster freedom to make all of this possible. And so you shared a couple of your reflections already on the Declaration of Independence, but any other thoughts you would offer? And then why would this be so vital for all Americans to reread as we think about this special anniversary?
Well, exactly. Why is it, when you travel around, and particularly if you're a member of Congress, people like to come up and say, I've been to America, I've been to America. And my wife is an engaging sort, and so she would always say, well, what surprised you about America? Or what was the most startling? What do you remember about America that was unexpected? The answer that comes back more than anything else is, you don't have walls around your property. He said, you don't know where your yard stops and where your neighbor's begins. And we start to think about that, and it's true. You go across the Rio Grande, you go from beautiful golf courses and gorgeous homes to barbed wire and walls, but also cut glass on top of the walls. And so why is that? Well, I believe it's because of what was on the wall of every schoolroom for 225 years. That is, thou shalt not covet. So in America, we never wanted to steal somebody's house or car. We wanted to say, someday, I want to have a house like that. Someday I want to have a car like that. And it was that culture that said, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not lie, bear false witness. You sign a contract to keep it. In America was built on a handshake. The people told the truth. And the free enterprise system can't function if people are lying and cheating. And it's not natural resources. If natural resources made you rich, Hong Kong would be one of the poorest places on earth, and Congo would be one of the richest, because Hong Kong is built on a rock, and Congo has all kinds. But it's the spiritual value system of right and wrong. Of that is that God gives us those things, and then having understanding it, then we incorporate it into a culture that we don't steal. I tell young people that are startled. I say, I've never owned a bicycle lock ever in my life. And I come out of school, there'd be 200 bicycles all over the yard. Nobody had bicycle locks on. Why? We could leave your bicycle out, obviously, overnight. You could leave it in the front yard for 2 weeks while you went on vacation. You didn't worry about it. You didn't steal. Why? Because we had that standard. That was the American culture. And when those people, we're not smarter than anybody else. We don't work harder than anybody else. And we're people from all over the world. But when they got to that American culture, that culture of honesty, hard work, faith in God, those things made us unique and made us bless the rest of the world. Now, the idea, how do you take that down? You don't take it down by saying it's bad. You say, we're going to make it better because we're going to diversify. And when you take a culture where little babies are left on the sidewalk and people step over them, they don't cure them because they want them to die so they can go to the next level. Whereas in America, we protect life, we want to rescue that if we incorporate them, that diversity is our strength. And let me just tell you as a little aside, diversity is never a strength. It never has been, never will be. Unity is what brings strength. The reason there's a huddle before every play in a football game is for one reason: to prevent diversity. When they snap that ball, it's not this guy, I think this is going to, I'm running backwards. No. It's everybody is on the same team. That's what made the American culture so great. And so this tremendous effort to undo the American culture, that by bringing these various perversions into our standard of living, we see it in little pieces and pockets of it in major cities. Now we have to pause and stop and go back to what made America that we're celebrating after 250 years. What was it? We hold these truths to be self-evident, which is a gracious Jeffersonian way of saying any idiot ought to understand this, that man is endowed by his Creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Well said. I think as far as maintaining that unity, one of the things at ALEC that we have focused a lot on is the importance of civics education. You talked about what our kids are being taught in school. How important is understanding America's history and our founding principles? How important is that for the next generation of our school children?
Well, as I say, he who controls the present controls the past. They write the history books. He who controls the past controls the future. And so one of the real damages to this country, and why I appreciate ALEC, is because it's committed to protecting parental control of the school system. And one of the real breaks that most people wouldn't remember, unfortunately I have to confess that I do, I remember when there were a whole handful of people running for president in the Democrat Party, many competent, capable folks, one former president and a former vice president rather, and a person who put to constitutional amendments in and all these various skills. But in the process of it, there was a fellow from Georgia who really couldn't compete on that level. And the teachers union, the National Education Association, wanted to take control away from the locals and run it to Washington where they could manipulate it and control it. And every single candidate for president in that 76 campaign, Hubert Humphrey and Scoop Jackson, Senator Harris from Oklahoma and Birch Bayh, they all said, no, 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 we're not going to do that. But school education belongs to control the local people. But one candidate who had no hope said, my name's Jimmy, and you endorse me, I'll give you your Department of Education. And the national unions endorsed him, which gave him workers all over the states as he's running in a primary. And then when he became president, he just established the National Department of Education, and it doesn't take, this is an opinion. You can go check the records. What was the purpose of school? Reading, writing, arithmetic. So let's just start with those and look at what happened once we had the National Department of Education. What happened in reading? Writing is beyond, they don't even teach cursive anymore. You can't even read the Declaration of Independence. And math scores are completely down until now we're at third world levels. And ALEC is committed to restoring parental and state control over education, which is just one of the many, many things that ALEC does great for our country. And after all the discussion, I think that as this we celebrate our 250th anniversary, we're right on the cusp of having a president and people that agree that that needs to be overturned, and that damage that began under that administration, whether it be gas lines and overthrowing the Shah and installing Khomeini in Iran and all the other things that he did, but that was one of the worst.
I think that was certainly a historic moment this year with that executive order that President Trump signed to dismantle the Department of Education. Like you mentioned, the achievement levels of our students since that agency was formed have been plummeting. And so that was something encouraging that our state legislators across the country, our organization, were cheerleading. And the other thing that I think is so critical, we've watched at ALEC this incredible movement of putting parents back in charge of education through universal education freedom, school choice. And so we hope that through these efforts, that civics education, that better understanding of why our country exists and why we're here, what's so great about America, we hope that's a part of this great movement in empowering parents.
It will be. Parents, given the choice, parents will choose teachers that can teach them to teach. As you know, under the school labor unions, their solution is if you have two teachers, one that is a good teacher and one that's incompetent, they believe the answer is to pay the incompetent teacher more money. And every parent knows, no, it'd be better to reward the good teacher. And you're going to see a lot of that take place as now hopefully the Congress follows the president's lead and undoes that damage that was done back in the late 70s.
Well said. Okay, so you were 24 years old when you were elected to the Ohio House of Representatives. We obviously have state legislators across the country that are watching this right now. What is your message in light of the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence? What's your message for state legislators as a former state legislator yourself?
Well, first of all, I would just say how much I appreciate state legislators. And I'll tell you a quick aside. A friend that had run for Congress twice, and he lost it in 2 elections by a combined total of less than 500 votes. Now, when you just barely miss, but one of the fellows that beat him was, the seat was open, he wanted to be appointed to had the vacancy. And he thought, well, I want to go to Washington. I want to do national things. And we chatted a bit, and I said, you need to understand that instead of the national automobiles, it's the Georgia automobiles. Instead of the National Farm Bureau, it's the Georgia Farm Bureau. It's the same principles, and you can make a greater impact. And fortunately, he took the appointment, and he called me about 6 weeks later. He said, Bob, I've never had so much fun in my life. The chance to make an impact in his neighborhood and with his people. The state legislators are just the dearest, greatest folks on earth. They care, they sacrifice. They all are. They have their own income, and yet they have to sacrifice their time from their family and their businesses. And as a result of that, The state governments are the solution. Remember, they're the ones that created the national government. And as we see this tremendous desire to move back to small towns and back to state government, I think we're going to see a real renaissance in our country. I truly believe it. We are on the cusp of the greatest era in American history.
I'm glad you said that, because it's something that we harp on all the time and our members agree with. It was the states that created the federal government, not the other way around. I love it. The other thing, Bob, and you've woven this into some of your comments here and there, but I know for a fact you have traveled the world. You have been to all types of different countries. So you have really, I think, gained an appreciation, even more so, of the freedoms that we have here in America. As you travel the world and you come back home, what are you appreciating the most about returning to the U.S.?
Well, there's really no difference. There's no comparison to America. 12 people a day in Britain are arrested for something that they put on a Twitter or a Facebook account. Now, we believe in free speech. We think it's natural. We think everybody believes in that. And I'll tell you, and if I go the opposite the other way around, it's a real mistake on our part to think the whole world's like America. So when we have our president say everybody wants to be free, everybody wants these things, no, they don't. No, they don't. We have a unique blessing, and it's our responsibility to keep it. And so when it's not built into the nature of man to do good. That's what James Madison said. He said, if men were angels, we wouldn't need government. But our government says that there is a right and wrong and a standard, and that is that when men and women are free to save and invest and produce. And how do you control people? One of the best ways you control them is take their money. And so when you lower the taxes and allow people to be free, you find out the country explodes. Let me just quickly say, in the year 2025, in the first 5 months of 2025, over $13 trillion from foreign folks wanted to invest in America. Now, let me put that in context. In 2023 and 2024, we don't have them for this year, but for 2023 and 24, the European Union, 27 countries, the combined foreign investment was $100 billion. 100 billion, not a trillion. And we got 13 trillion in this little 4% called America. So why? Because we're honest. The purpose of government is not to regulate and control, manipulate people. The degree to which you do that, you create poverty. New York City, you can look at where people are coming and going, and that's the beauty of the states, is that constantly, rather than making a mistake like California is doing, rather than doing that for the whole country, they screw up their state, but people can then escape to Nevada or Arizona or Texas. And so by preserving those freedoms, then the nation continued to prosper and bless, and I can say that having this experiment with excessive government, we're now going to retreat, I believe, and that freedom will allow America to take off as never before.
Well, that truly is the beauty of our system of federalism, the 50 laboratories of democracy. We can so quickly see what's working and what's not coming out of the states. And state leaders, if Congress is moving too slowly, they don't have to wait on Congress to pass a solution.
Let's do a quick example. Just recently, a matter of weeks, Florida surpassed New York as the third most popular state in the union. What does that mean? That means they're really the same. They're exactly the same population. And yet the budget in Albany, New York is twice the size of the budget in Tallahassee, Florida. The greater the government, the greater the poverty. The greater the freedom, the greater the wealth. And now once you know that formula, you can show, and I don't need to know the name of the country. You just give me what percentage of the GDP of any city, any state, or any nation. And you'll find out. You show me what percentage is going to government, and I can tell you the poverty level and put them all in order. Because freedom is what creates wealth, not government.
Yeah, I think a lot of the traffic on 95 South is just New Yorkers headed down to Florida. And it's incredible that Florida's doing it with no personal income tax.
And 2 more states this year, because members of ALEC are doing away with the state income tax. We have a candidate for governor in Ohio who's going to do with the state income tax. I remember when it was passed in the 1970s. That idea of having more government is never ever worked. And let me say about New York and those places, it's just a heartbreak. It's a heartbreak when you go through Schenectady and those beautiful cities in New York State. Now, Connecticut is following the same thing. It's going from those beautiful places, and now they're getting run down and chaotic. California, so gorgeous, so everything going. 5th largest GDP on the planet. It's larger than the same size as France. France has a navy, has an air force, has embassies all over the world. California should be rolling in money, but incompetent leadership, because of they don't have good majority legislators that are members of ALEC. You could get 50 ALEC members and send them to Sacramento and restore that state overnight. That's what makes the difference as to whether or not states prosper. And like you said, we can see it up close. Fortunately, unlike other countries, when you get a haywire leader like in New Zealand or someplace, you take the whole country down the tube. But this way, when they're doing, they only take New York or Connecticut or Sacramento.
Yeah, I think we've got so many examples of states that are maybe getting it wrong, and you see so many taxpayers voting with their feet. And thankfully, there are just as many, if not more, states that are starting to get it right. You mentioned the states that are looking to phase out their income taxes, but for every New York and California, there's a Florida, there's a Tennessee, there's an Idaho and Arkansas, states that are they're really capitalizing on this opportunity of this system that we've created. So,
and those that are on the margin, New Hampshire and others, they can come back. There's no reason. Illinois is such a gorgeous, wonderful state, and to be so screwed up, fouled up, and collapsing the way that it is because of corrupt Cook County. So, in the same way in Michigan, what a wonderful dynamite state, but because of the corruption of Detroit. So as we begin to straighten those things up, they can come back, and I think they're on its way.
And there's a home for leaders from all of these states at ALEC. We're a 50-state organization. We're proud to have members in all of these states and offer great solutions. But Bob, this has been an incredible conversation with you to reflect on America's history, the 250th anniversary. Any final thoughts from you?
Yes. I would hope that people would understand what the American Legislative Exchange Council is. It's made up of people. They're primarily just realtors and farmers and car dealers and people that took time away from their family and church in order to contribute to this, the greatest nation on earth. And by doing that, why don't we have common sense? And how did you fix this problem in Utah? How did you fix this problem in Tennessee? How did you fix this problem in Pennsylvania? And as they begin to collaborate and to work together, why? Because they're not professional politicians. They're basically people that are sacrificially giving of themselves. And ALEC gives the platform for them to do great things for our country, unlike any other organization in the world. And I would say that one of my best friends and heroes was there at the founding, Buzz Lukens from Ohio. And I admire everything you're doing and wish you every success, not only for ALEC, but for America.
My name is Mark Anderson, and I represent the 92nd District in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. When William Penn arrived in what would become known as Penn's Woods, he dreamed of a society that valued and honored peaceful coexistence with diverse populations and allowed the governed to have a voice in how they were governed and by whom they were governed. Penn's vision for the colony of Pennsylvania was radical in 1681, the year in which the Penn family acquired an enormous tract of land in what is now Delaware and Pennsylvania. The land was granted to William Penn's father, Admiral William Penn, for his assistance in restoring Charles II to the throne of England as both a military leader and financier of Charles' ascension. Due to the Admiral's service, the Penn family were the largest non-royal landowners in North America. The foundation of William Penn's progressive views was his faith, which inspired his deeply held convictions that God intended man to pursue peace, holiness, and equality. Penn's Quaker's faith was rooted in the gospel, and for Penn, personal faith was not limited to belief. Penn and his Quaker brethren believed one's faith was to be shared, acted upon, and outwardly displayed by acts of good works and goodwill. William Penn and his family were personally acquainted with religious and political persecution, as experienced in England, Ireland, and Germany. As a result, William Penn was wholly committed to a free society. In North America, Penn would initially receive opposition from Dutch and Swedish settlers who had already established communities within the future colonies of Delaware and Pennsylvania. However, under Penn's righteous commitment to purpose, Penn's Woods became the desired destination for settlers throughout the 18th century. Swedes, Dutch, Scotch-Irish, Germans, English, and Native Americans lived in a more harmonious and free society than any other colony. Pennsylvania's religious tolerance was an early model for the First Amendment's enshrined guarantee against governmental establishment of religion and the protection of individual free practice of religion. The moderate climate and rich soil made Pennsylvania an unparalleled agricultural producer. Industry flourished in Pennsylvania due to the plentiful timber and additional natural resources. Pennsylvania was well on its way to being the center of colonial America. Early on, William Penn established the city of Philadelphia as a center of commerce and government, not knowing the role the city of brotherly love would play in American independence. In 1774, 12 of the 13 colonies met in Philadelphia for the First Continental Congress. The Congress met specifically to address the Crown's oppression of the colonies as a whole. Although the intolerable acts were most intensely felt in Boston, Philadelphia would become the intellectual and strategic center of resistance to the mother country. The First Congress declared there to be God-given rights that our eventual nation would adhere to: life, liberty, property, and assembly. As the colonies moved to break their bonds with the greatest superpower in the world, they called for a Second Continental Congress, which would place Pennsylvania at the center of world history. Pennsylvania would officially initiate the American experiment with the drafting and signing of the Declaration of Independence. Pennsylvania would become the birthplace of the United States of America with the drafting of the Constitution in Philadelphia. Pennsylvania was the home to the most signers of the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution. 9 Pennsylvanians signed the Declaration, and 8 citizens of the appropriately named Keystone State signed the United States Constitution. Penn's Woods started as a dream, a vision of a better world where opportunity was abundant and freedom was the foundational principle of man's existence. This dream was realized in the great American experiment that began in the colony William Penn founded.